Hey, welcome everybody. Good morning. It's Saturday morning. This is Multifamily Unplugged. And, like my good friend Bryce always says, you know what time it is. And I think I'm actually going to steal that. The other one I stole was buckle up, right? You're going to want to buckle up for this morning. But you know what time it is because it's time for Multifamily Unplugged. So go grab your coffee, buckle up, sit back. You're going to enjoy this morning's ride. There's no doubt about that. And my guest this morning is a previous guest that I had on before, and I am so excited about having him back again today. But before we get into that, I want to remind you that this week coming up is the Multifamily Summit. Multifamily, this is our third annual event, virtual 3-day event. It's going to be the biggest virtual event of 2022. I have over 30 speakers over 3 days. So we're going to have breakout rooms, networking. I have a securities attorney on talking about the legalities of syndicating and doing multifamily deals. I have Karen Hall, who's going to talk about self-directed IRAs. I have a number of people who have scaled their business, left the W-2 world, and are doing multifamily full time. I think I tried to add it up, and there's well over 100,000 units that are owned, operated, and traded by all the people that are involved on over these 3 days. So it's a big event. We're going to talk about raising capital, structuring your business, getting started, how to build relationships. You're going to have an opportunity to build relationships. I'm going to have a couple of killer panels. And you know what? Michael Zhao is going to be there, and we're going to play cash flow. If you have ever played the board game Cash Flow, and much less virtually, you're not going to want to miss this. So get registered now. Go to multifamily22.com. Get registered for the event. I have an announcement at the end of the show that I'll share real quick to give you an advantage. But let's get on with today's show. My guest today, Chris Prefontaine. Chris is from Rhode Island. His company is Wicked Smart. And he is wicked smart. I've had Chris on the show before. A little bit about Chris. This is the second year in a row that his company made the Inc. list for the fastest growing company. And Chris is back with a new book. So let's bring him in. Chris, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Mike. Good to be back, buddy.
Man, it's good to see you again. You and I have some history. I mean, well beyond just a couple of podcasts together. Me
90s.
being on your show, you being on mine back in the 90s. Geez. Quit trying to make me old, would you?
Yeah. I figured I'd drag you in with me.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So, hey, it's I always tell people, I say it's about your intentionality, and it's about the exercise routine and what you do to stay physically fit, right? How we eat, how we work out, things like that. And you know what? I got to live to be 100 at least. So
I'm with you.
Hey, Chris, so you know the drill. Every time I start these shows, I ask that one word: what best describes you personally and professionally? And what is it for you?
I had forgotten until I jumped back in, but I'm going to use the word passionate. And the reason is whether I'm with Kim up in Stowe, Vermont, building our new house, or I'm with the kids, or I'm with the grandkids, or I'm with my business, that's the word that comes to mind.
Passion. What do you think? Where do you think that came from in your life? Because to do what you do what I do, I think we have to be passionate about it.
Probably the people I surround myself, or at least I try to, Mike. You and I come from the same breed on this one. Are big thinkers. It's pretty hard not to get passionate about something when you're hanging out with people that think big. At our recent event, I had one guy talk about dreams and goals, and people thought, oh, this would be foo-foo. I'm getting requests from people saying, can you bring him back because he made me think bigger? And we limit ourselves by not. And so I think that's what drives the passion, if you do it right.
Yeah, when you build companies and you build any type of a business, you have to be a big thinker, right? You can't just be a pencil pusher or somebody who's doing the little mundane day-to-day things. You have to really think outside the box. I know in your world as well as mine that building strong teams is helpful in that, because we have to go find people that are better at certain things or don't mind doing certain things that keep us from thinking big or driving the vision of the company forward.
Well, this is good, really good point you just brought up, because I used to think in the older days that if I brought someone on, it was an expense and my brain couldn't get wrapped around it. I can't afford each step.
Yeah.
And now I realize, I don't know when this came to me, maybe like in 19, after I've been part of this company that helped us scale since 17. And that is when you have the right people on the team or on the bus or on the plane, whatever analogy you want to use, you should be driving revenue. It should drive revenue if it's done properly, with very few exceptions. Obviously, you have your admin and your executive assistants, but and even them, if you do it right, it should drive revenue. You should be excited about building that team.
Yeah. Yeah. What was there's an analogy in business that for every dollar we spend, we should get a $3 return for it.
Well, there's a ratio we use, and I know it's not our ratio because this company that we follow tracks it, right? And depending on how big your company is, just revenue per employee, and it ranges somewhere between, if you're struggling, 200,000, and if you're doing really well, it's up in the 325 to 350. So per employee. So we track that very, very closely every year. We watch it grow throughout the year, but at the end of the year, we want to know where we are, because that tells you, should you be hiring? Are you behind? That's how we know we're hiring now.
So are you indicating that for revenue brought in, for products sold or services rendered?
Total revenue. Yeah, total revenue. So if we've got 20 employees and any company is hitting, say, 300,000 revenue you should be around the 6 million range, right? So you should be able to know roughly how many employees, or should I be hiring now, based on that model. And of course, it is for companies that surpass the million, because to get into this company, we've been scaling with since 17. You got to be over $1 million, and then you can scale. And then we're the smallest in the group now, which, even though we're growing, we're the smallest in the group. You got to be over $1 million to be in it.
Wow. That's interesting. So good for you. Hey, so listen, let's tell people who you are, what you do. If you want to give a little background and history on yourself.
Sure. So I won't do 31 years because you and I will fall asleep, but because it's 31 years last month, Mike, and you and I met at the beginning of that. So
right.
I was a realtor back in the days where I met Mike. Prior to that, I was a builder. I never built, but I hooked up with a builder, and we did some cool things where we tied up land on terms. We didn't pay for it until the house was built and the financing came and everybody got paid. I look back to how naive I was to even ask people to do that in my 20s. And then after that, I sold my franchise to Coldwell Banker. I had a realty executives franchise. After that, I started doing my own investments and coaching people throughout US and Canada. But what took me down in 2008 was my own properties I had. I bought them conventionally, like most people think you have to buy in real estate. And so it took me, 4 years to wind out of that financially and mentally was the hardest thing. And so by 2012, I just re-engineered everything to do what we do today, which is buying and selling with creative real estate by means of lease purchase, owner financing, and subject to existing financing. That's the only way we'll buy. Mike, we control now, at any one time, because things come and go, about 80 million in real estate. And we are not on one single solitary loan and never will be. And that's a different mental thing to go to sleep at night than it was pre-08, right? When you knew if something happened, you're toast because you're signed personally.
Yeah. It's interesting. And I want to come back to the creative financing side, the creative strategies, because when I first got involved in the real estate business, the very first deal I ever did was a creative owner finance deal. I used to follow Robert Allen, but let's circle back to that. I want to ask a pretty poignant question right now. So knowing where we're at in today's economy, where the market is, where the market's headed, I just did a live a little while ago with a guy. We talked about the new inflationary numbers that came out this week and how, Powell is saying that inflation is high and, we're going to be in this for a while.
Yeah.
Do you think that we're in a 2008 cycle? Do you think it's as bad as it was? It's going to be as bad as it was? What's your opinion on the market?
Okay. I mean, all it is an opinion, right? You and I know this because nobody knows. The billionaires don't know. You can listen to podcasts and radio show and TV after TV. No one knows for sure. What I think is it's not as bad as 08. It's a different set of circumstances. It might be bad, but it's a different bad if people think it's bad. This as far as where I sit in creative real estate, in 50 years, I'll give you two stats. In 50 years, this is the third time that there's an affordability problem, not just a supply and demand, meaning the buyers now are flushed out of the market, right? With the interest rates, like sadly. So if we know there's already an affordability issue and it's only the third time in 50 years, and we know that our 50-year interest rate average is 7.7-ish, it's about what it's been in 50 years. That's the average. Well, we're not even there yet. It's going to get worse for buyers, which means sellers can't sell the same, right? Everything's just slowing down. That screams loudly to creative financing. So I'm ecstatic. I'm ecstatic because the buyers and sellers now need us more than ever. And I'm ecstatic because the percentage of deals that are fractured, meaning they die at the closing table. Mike, it's climbing. I don't know if you've seen this one. It was like in the teens 2 months ago. It's hitting 22% now. 22% of deals that are done conventionally with financial institutions, 22% are dying before they close at the closing table. That's called a fractured closing. So I can keep going, but those three stats I get excited about because creative financing now is needed more than ever. So it's a great time for us right now.
And I love that stat because, even on the commercial side, and we know that you're focused on single family, that
primarily
residential. Yeah, primarily residential. But I'm in the multifamily space and we're seeing those fractured deals too. I mean, people walking away from the closing table because, interest rates went up and they can't retrade the deal. And so it is an interesting time. That's for sure.
I should have hit multi. So I teach single family because I want them to not have shiny object syndrome. Yeah. But my office building, I'm in my home today, but my office building was bought on owner financing. It's a multi-tenanted commercial building. We had a student, Mike, brought us a deal because we're hooked up with rehabbers and multifamily. We can get them all done. But he brought us a deal. The seller on a multifamily, I think it was like 50-something units, just wanted out. He was spent from COVID, even though we both know that the rent demand now is pretty cool, but he was spent, just wants out. He financed it with no money down, and he amortized it over 50 years for cash flow for this investor. So these deals have been done since the 1600s. You and I know that, but people think it's new. It's not new. It's just a huge demand now. Multifamily, commercial, and residential are going to be booming in the creative space, not conventional.
And a lot of this gets talked about, but from a really high level, people don't dig in. And when I first got exposed to real estate, I went to a Robert Allen seminar. Remember Robert Allen?
I sure do. Yep.
He was the no money down, OPM, other people's money, creative financing guru of the world back then.
Yep.
And I left a half day event, signed up for the weekend event, went to the weekend event, left there so excited. I found myself scouring the newspaper. This is how old we are, Chris. I found myself scouring the newspaper on Monday morning, went out and saw 2 for sale by owners long before cell phones, right? And, came home with a 4-unit building that I had bought owner financed with $1,000 down.
Cool story.
So, that was my first taste saying, you know what, this stuff works.
Awesome.
I love the fact though that this has been going on since the early 1600s. You said
I used to say 1800s, right? Because I was reading the book about the there's a history show about like the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers, but then I read Anderson Cooper's book about his family, the Vanderbilts.
Okay. If
you look out my back window here, it's over the water, but across the water is the cliff walk where all the mansions are. So I picked up the book for that reason. I don't like or dislike him or his work, but I picked it up for that reason, for the history. And in there, he talked about his family doing owner financing in New York City before banking existed. That's why it's so cool.
Wow. Interesting. So, you had kind of alluded to the fact, actually mentioned the fact that not only can you do this on the residential side, but you can do it on the commercial side.
Most definitely.
You said you bought an office building owner financing?
Yeah, my office building that I'm usually in doing these interviews is us, my property companies, my coaching companies, Allstate Insurance is in there. Like I have multiple tenants to go, as you and I know, to go to commercial underwriting nowadays. Not only the down payment would have to be high, but they take a microscope and it's not a good experience to go into underwriting. So I didn't do that. I sat in the office. It's now my office with this gentleman. He said, I love math. What do you got in mind? And we structured that deal in about 15 minutes. Come to find out, he was a math major. Come to find out, he was the largest landowner, one of them on the island here. We live on a 3-town island. So we did that owner financing 20-year deal, 20-year deal. No
Wow.
banks.
Interesting. And what I want people to really understand, though, is that this can be done. It happens, and you're doing it continually with people, and this is what you coach and you train on and you teach people about. Hey, one of the things when I introed you was that this is the second year in a row you've hit the fastest growing company on the Inc. list. Talk about that process a little bit, what that looks like, how you got there.
Yeah. So it's the fastest growing company, 5,000 list. We landed somewhere in the middle. I think it was 24 and change. There's some ridiculously fast growing companies there. But it's not one of those, Mike, submit an application and pay a fee. Yeah. It's, I got myself into it the first year. My CFO said, hey, I think you should submit with the growth we've had. So we did. But what ensued after that was grueling, like the audits, the financials, the affidavits. It's like an IRS audit. It's deep. So then I looked and I said, okay, both years we hit it, 20 and 21, because it takes them 6 months. We just found this out. Both years I realized there's nobody in our space that made the Inc. 5000 list. Nobody. And so I'm not saying look at us. I am saying there's some credibility behind that. That's super important, because sadly there are too many companies in our space, and you and I both know some of them, that are really good marketers, but that's where it stops. They do not care about supporting it. They do not care if you do a deal ever, because they already sold you. And it's the complete opposite with us. And we're there to do deals and makes, change people's lives. That's what does it.
Well, that statement, I think you can back up by your stats of saying that you and your student, when you say you and your students own $80 million?
We usually control about 80 million. That counts properties coming on, properties selling. It hovers around that mark. We've done well over 100 million in transactions, well over 1,000 properties. I stopped counting. I just say over now. Yeah. We tally this, Mike. This is interesting. So we have our 3 payday system we trademarked in the U.S. And the profits on those 3 paydays per one deal range from 45 grand to 250. So my CMO before the last event said, hey, Chris, let's tally where we are. Like, what if students, forget us, what if students earned in the 3 paydays so far to date? It was over 50 million. Wow. Well, that's a lot of creative real estate getting paid to people who had JOBs before. I happen to be wearing my shirt today, right along the lines of you, like helping people plan their escape from their W-2. It's crazy. Let's do it,
Yeah. And, people do it. I remember having a coaching client one time. He said to me, hey, I need to leave my job. And I said, well, have you written a plan? He goes, right. No. He goes, I don't know where to start. And I said, well, you have to look at what do you have to replace, right? And it was a $200,000 a year income. Said, so what will get you there? Said, if you go buy a $5 million multifamily deal, and, this is different in every space, but if you go buy a multifamily deal and get a 3% acquisition fee for putting that together, there's $149,000 right there.
There's a lot of ways to skin it.
There's a lot of ways to get there and get there quick. So you use the word control a lot, and there's a difference between ownership and control of the real estate. Mm-hmm. Can you explain that to people? Give people a good insight around that.
Sure. And I'll preface it with this. I'm going to explain what it means, but I'll preface it with once any student, not just us, understands the difference, they go for the ownership versus the control. It's just they don't get it sometimes, or they're a little nervous to actually own it versus control. Control for us would be a lease purchase. I put Mike's home under agreement for a lease purchase. I now can control that property. I'm actually on title by way of a notice of option. And now I have the right to go ahead and sell that. We tend to sell rent to own, but that's who we sell to. But I do control that property, and the whopping deposit that's built into our agreement is $10. So we had a gentleman in Chicago, Brian. He's like a poster child for the community now. He's awesome. And he did his first 8 deals with us. And he was an elevator salesman before this, no real estate. His first 8 deals, Mike, on the 3 paydays was like over 838 grand, approaching $1 million. He's over $1 million now. But each one of the first 8, $10 a piece, $10 to create those 3 paydays. So that's control versus owner financing or subject to existing financing where you actually get the deed. You buy the property. Right. And there's obvious advantages when you buy the depreciation, the flexibility of this could be a 20-year deal, not a 2 or 3. There's a lot of advantages. But it's nice for a new person to go, okay, $10. I don't have much risk, if any. I don't own it. I control it. Like, that's a neat thing for a new person, but slow but sure, you grow out of that.
Yeah. So when we talk about creative financing,
Yep.
And a lot of people hear the term and they don't really get it. They don't understand what it is. There's different types of creative financing deals you could put together. You talked about lease option as one. What are some of those other creative financing strategies that people can use?
Well, there's variations of the lease option, the owner financing, and the subject to existing financing. Those are like our base, but there's a concept in the community I call wealth stacking. And that's where you take, like, let's say it's a lease purchase, and you do your first deal and you do lease purchase. And then you say, well, I kind of get it now. The light bulb goes off and you think, oh, what, man, I should have bought that. You can actually go back to the seller and turn that into a subject to or an owner financing. And now you bought that property longer term, and you can stack these things together. They don't have to be short-term deals. But creative comes in outside of those three variables. Creative comes in inside the deal too. Example, just today, I have a group of the highest level students we have that text me every night, voice text. It's 30 seconds to a minute, how their numbers went for that day, any challenges. Well, one guy sent me a 4-minute message, Mike, last night. So I'm on the bike this morning at like 4:30 a.m. and I get this message. I'm like, oh my good God. What he was saying is the closing's going to blow up and there's this lien we found and all these things. And I called him back. I said, Rick, every single one of those is not a problem. Here's the pivot you make. And I gave him the solution literally in like 30, 40 seconds. I'm going to announce it tonight, what he thought his problem was. But the point is, in creative real estate, it's never a problem. There's a solution to it. I gave him a pivot or 2 or 3, and he's going to still close that deal tomorrow, where he thought the whole world was blowing up. In creative real estate, there's never one box. Does that make sense? That was a long answer to your question. I hope
yeah, no, 100% it makes sense. And what's interesting is it never should be our problem. It's we want to solve that seller's problem. Yep. So I always tell people, I say, hey, you got to find a seller that has a situation where they're a don't wanter, where they have a problem in their life that you can satisfy for them or solve for them, help them cure their problem. And now you have a win-win situation.
Yeah. People say all the time to us, how do you convince the seller? Like, what, you got to sell? No, you do it. Mike just said, you listen to their problem. And it's not always, let me clarify this, not always a problem financially. Like the owner financing guy who was free and clear, his wasn't a problem. It was he couldn't accomplish his goal in the conventional market because he wanted to spread out his capital gains. He wanted to do some estate planning with his kid. He's since passed away. He did the right thing. Maybe he knew something was going on. So his family didn't inherit a building. They inherited a cash flow stream. Think about it. Mm-hmm. So you're either solving a problem or helping them accomplish a goal they couldn't do in the conventional market, in our case.
Cash flow stream is great. I talk about generational wealth all the time.
Yeah.
And that's how we build that. Hey, so you mentioned numbers. Numbers are really important. You and I both know that every successful business in the country knows their numbers.
Yeah.
So you've got people that are checking in with you, your coaching clients that are checking in with you saying, hey, here's what I did. What are some of the expectations you have as a coach of your clients that they're doing every day?
Well, I'll start with the broader, then go to the daily. The broader are, I want to upfront, and we have video after video that tells them this, but I want to commit to them when they're live with me, managing their expectation. This is not a get rich quick, despite most of the people marketing to you telling you it is. It's not. But once you learn the skill set, you have it for life. Like with or without me, you're going to go buy a house for your family someday with this technique. So get the expectations in line. Secondly, when you tell me you're going to do something, it's do what you say you're going to do, or we're out of alignment. And then, so now get to the metrics. If they're on the business that day, I teach them to do, Mike, very familiar with you, I know from our past, I teach them to do 50-minute sprints when they're doing their outgoing calls, and I give them the metrics. So if I get a call and someone says at night with their check-in, hey, Chris, I did 2 dials, 10 dials. I've gotten these calls. And I say, I don't get it. What are you doing for the other 50 minutes? Because I know they should hit 25 to 35 dials. I don't care how long people talk. So just the metrics are simple for us. We know how many dials they got to do to get a lead, and how many, same as you and I used to do in a different biz, and how many leads they got to get in the door, and then how to get a contract and get that home under ownership already. And so if they're not doing those, but yet their goals are big, they're not aligned with their goals. So I go, whoa. lower your goal or up your effort because we're not in alignment here. So that's all it's about. And then having them say, okay, hold me accountable. And again, I know you and I grew up in the real estate business that way.
Right. And we did. We came up in the business that way. And that's how we learned. I mean, I could tell you right now, I remember my numbers. 20,000 dials a year gave me 125 listings sold a year.
There you go.
So, every time I picked the phone up, I think I made $22 a call every time I dialed the phone.
Right.
So when people say, when your business is predictable like that, and you don't feel like getting out of bed in the morning, but you know that if you make 200 dials today and you're going to miss out on $4,000 of income, that's your choice then, right?
Yeah. And in addition to that, if you're not getting out of bed, you got to get a bigger why. I mean, seriously, if you're not excited to get up in the morning, you got to either change your why or change your path.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Hey, so you got a new book out, huh?
Yep, we just hit bestseller a couple weeks ago. It was the easiest track that we've ever had to hit it, and maybe just because our footprint's so much bigger now. Our first book was like climbing a mountain, but yeah, it's called Sell with Authority for the Real Estate Investor, and it's real life with us in it. It talks about how we became and how you can become the authority, meaning before you pick up the phone, someone knows they're calling you because you're the expert in the marketplace. And then we have about 5 students, I didn't tell you this, Mike, that co-author it with us. So you're going to get the real down and dirty, like they came from nothing and how did they get here?
Yeah, interesting. How do people get that?
They can go on Amazon, and then the link that you posted right there, we're going to actually send them another couple of the other 2 books that were bestsellers. So if they want, they can buy the new one on Amazon. It's not a lot of money.
Yeah, good. I always tell people that there's that education piece, right? So we read a book, we listen to a tape, we go to listen to a podcast, go to a seminar, but now we got to take action.
Yeah, right.
And how do you encourage your people? What's your process with keeping people engaged in the activities that need to happen?
We all camp out on a Slack platform. So every night, depending on what level you're at, but every night they're supposed to post their metrics. So this is serious public accountability. And then in the higher level groups, again, sort of what you and I were used to, that I handle like 16 personally still. We hold each other. So it's not just me looking at, it's each of us. Hey, if someone's off track, they're getting called out by the fellow student, not me necessarily. So it's metrics like that. It's also what I said earlier. Aligning with their why, constantly making sure what they're doing is going to get them there. Does your calendar, if I look at your calendar today, does that tell me where you're going for your why? And if it doesn't support it, you're out of alignment because your calendar's either your line or your calendar's line.
Right. It's kind of like when they say, hey, let me take a look at your checkbook register, and what's really important in somebody's life. That
one drives me crazy because it doesn't matter who, I won't use names, but there's a gentleman that wants me to coach him constantly, but constantly takes like it's a buffet. Like I give him A through D and he goes, all right, Chris, thanks. Tomorrow I'm doing B and then I might try D next week. And I'm going, whoa, it's not a buffet. You got to do A through D or you're going to get a different result.
Yeah. You got to follow the process, right? It's all about the process. So what's the next exciting thing for you that you have coming up or you're working on?
We end our 5-year mission, which is hard to believe, this December. We set it December of 17 for a 5-year mission to do 500 transactions with the students and to hit some other milestones. We're going to nail that mission. And now we've started to work on the mission. We're going to do a 3-year mission. So it'll run 23, 24, 25, and we'll get somewhere around a 12 million mark as a company, which means we're going to change a whole bunch of lives. When you do one transaction, when a student does one transaction, they affect 3 families generationally, the buyer, the seller, and them, because most people don't think they could do creative real estate. Most buyers right now, Mike, think, I'm done. I can't buy. I thought I could 6 months ago. Now I can't afford it. So you just affected them generationally where they can teach their kids how they did it and so on and so forth. So that's what we're all about again for the next 3-year mission.
Wow, interesting. Good for you. What a great focus, and really building into other people. So, a lot of times, and you and I have been to these training companies where it's all about them and you know how big can they get and how many people can they put in a room, and what I think you and I have graduated to is we're way beyond that, right?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
hey, thanks. I appreciate you being here this morning and your insight. Your energy is always contagious. So I hope people grab onto that and get through the rest of the weekend just focused in on that a little bit, and that they reach out to you and, see how you can help them and grow them. Let's shift gears a little bit. My 3 famous questions.
I actually forget, so this would be raw and organic. Go ahead.
There we go. Raw. I love that. Best book you've ever read?
This will change every 3 months if you ask me. I read Michael Dell's book when I was on vacation last time. It's fairly current, and I loved it. For an entrepreneur, it's a great book.
Do you remember the name?
I don't. That'd be too easy.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. So was it about him or?
Yeah, he goes through his story, but he also talks about COVID, post-COVID, the entrepreneurial shift move, what's going on now. It's crazy.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Sounds like something I need to read.
Yep.
How about best tourist attraction?
Best tourist attraction for me? Mike, I haven't done that in a long, long time. I'm up in Vermont building a 30-year goal of building a house up there. So that's my attraction right now.
Oh, how about best restaurant?
Best restaurant would be we're blessed in Newport. We've got so many restaurants, but the Italian one that's between my house and my office called Ida's.
Ida's. Interesting.
IDA.
I'm gonna have to come to Rhode Island.
I give them a plug. I hope they hear your show.
Awesome. Hey, Chris, thanks for being here. Tell people how they get a hold of you if they want to talk to you about, creative financing, coaching, get your book.
I'm going to do something that I don't do on the show. You got the link posted there for the free book, wickedsmartbooks.com/Mike. That's free. There's no shipping. We're not going to ask you for your credit card. What I will do is say this. I'm going to give my personal email, Mike. I don't know, just because of our relationship. And if they want to talk, I'll point them to where I think we're all free with the resources. So I'll point them to where I think they can live. It's just Chris, CHRIS at smartrealestatecoach.com. Yes, I'll get the email. And then if you want to camp out on YouTube, we have 150 plus deals posted. Like, we don't hold back. They're all on YouTube. Go watch it for free and subscribe.
Yeah. Interesting process. I love creative financing. It's where we both cut our teeth. And I think that a lot of people could get started in real estate. And frankly, I don't think I've ever seen a better time in history. And we've been doing this for 30 years. So
you took the words right out of my mouth. I have not seen it in 31 years. Never.
So now is a time because this engineering that the government is doing right now is only going to help the real estate investor and the space that we're in. So, Chris, thanks for being here. I look forward to continuing conversations with you and circling back again sometime, and maybe after your next book or whatever. But thanks for being here. Thanks for being here this week, everybody. Appreciate you. Look forward to seeing you at the summit coming up this week. Go to multifamily22.com, get registered for that. And if I said I had a special offer for him, Chris, and what I want to tell you is if you get registered between now and Wednesday, what I will do for you, buy a general admission ticket. I'll upgrade you to VIP Plus, and you'll be up close and personal with all the speakers, be able to do some networking and gain a little bit more insight to propel your business. Chris, thanks again. Look forward to talking to you soon. You have a great day.
Thank you.
I hope you're enjoying this morning's show and guest. If you love getting content and insider secrets just like this, then you won't want to miss this year's annual Multifamily Summit. I will host the stage to over 20 of the nation's top multifamily owner-operators, where we will pour into you for 3 full days. This 3-day virtual event, October 20th through the 22nd, is committed to help you take your multifamily business to the next level. You will hear from speakers like Brian Briscoe, Abel Pacheco, and Bronson Hill, and many others. You're going to learn how to mitigate your way and succeed through the changing market environment. Register now at multifamily